know yourself and know, hey, what is your risk tolerance? What are the skill set? What are the type of people you like managing? What do you not want to do just as much as what you want to do? And that awareness is so important.
Representing Franchise Secrets, Erik Von Horn.
Bobby, you have a mess behind you. What's going on over at the Brennan
A
household? It's
mess.
a mess.
That's an understatement, Eric. We are doing an addition on a home with a 9-week-old baby at home. And my wife and I both own a couple businesses. So no big deal here. Just, I'd be bored if things were easy. So we have a remodel. So all the stuff for my basement, for all the plumbing that got moved out of my son's playroom is now in my office. So pardon the mess.
All right, I've pardoned that mess. We're talking about buying a second brand. And this is something that a lot of people have asked me about, and I wanted to spend some time with you specifically talking about getting into a second or third or fourth brand, whatever it is. You have experience doing that, helping tons of people buy a second brand. So you get to hear all the reasons why, and sometimes it's a smart move, and sometimes it's a stupid move. I've done it myself multiple times, and I've owned multiple brands at any given time. So I think this will be just a fun, good conversation that will help franchisors think about when to bring somebody else that's already focused on another business. Are they able to come in and own a second brand? And franchisees out there, no matter what stage you are at in your franchise, you're probably always thinking, I want another brand. The grass is not always greener. That's, kind of number one, the grass is not always greener, but it's always, I think most time it's been a really good move for me. So when someone wants to start a second brand as a franchisee, what are some things that come to mind in your role?
Yeah, no, great point, Eric. And I think, the first thing, self-awareness in franchising is a big thing anyway. So understanding their capacity is a big thing. And so, there's always two things, like with every franchisee, and most people think this way. If I'm a franchisee, do I go deeper or do I go wider? Deeper meaning, hey, do I just same brand, do I go deeper and buy an existing location or add more territory of an existing brand? There's pros and cons to doing that. Now, maybe you might be in a brand franchisee, and many that we talk to, even one recently I'm thinking of, it was sold out nearby. All the other territory was sold out in this more mature brand. And so they said, I can't go deeper with that brand. Otherwise, it's 2, 3, 4 hours away. So I'd have to go 4 hours away. That's a whole different management strategy, a whole different management structure. Whereas if I could own the territory I'm currently in, I currently have infrastructure in a complementary business, right? That maybe overlaps, the customer base overlaps, even the marketing might overlap, the customer list overlap. So it's a lighter lift for them. So that's what I call going wider meaning different brands, deeper with one brand. That's the first and foremost thing I tell people to think about is there's no wrong or right answer, but do I go deeper with a brand? Maybe it's a killer brand. I want to go deeper and open more territories with that. Or do I diversify? Maybe, hey, that market, there's competitors coming into the space. Maybe it's something of, hey, the franchisor is having some growth challenges. I really want to diversify that. So the first thing I look at is, should I go deeper or wider? More of the same, or let's expand into another brand. And if you do that, then you've got to look at your capacity, because just like when you join your first brand, there's a learning curve. And so I just talked to a candidate the other day that wants to start 2 brands at once. No, hard stop. Just no. That's a terrible idea, because you're going to be learning 2 different systems, 2 different processes, 2 different industries. But they felt like they had the bandwidth to do it. And I said, why do that? If nothing else, go buy the other brand, because I don't want split time. You're either all in or you're all out. Doesn't mean you can't be all in later once you get your feet under you, but until you got a manager in place or until you had a business running, it's typically not a good idea to start 2 brands at once unless you have dedicated partners or people that can do it. Expanding into 2 brands is a great idea for a lot of folks, maybe not at the same time. So those are just a couple of the things I think about. Do I go deeper or do I go wider? Timing capacity, but then also like, is the skill set similar that's going to translate? And if I'm doing one thing in one industry, let's call it tires as a good example, and I want to expand into spray tanning. Okay, like help me understand as a developer and a franchisor. That's the question I'm going to ask: is help me understand what skill sets are going to transfer and what's not. Where are you going to need support? Just because I can run a great Orange Theory doesn't mean I can run a great tire business. Or just because I run a great tire business doesn't mean I can run a great Orange Theory. A lot of those same similarities, the discernment, the hiring, the general skill set will transfer. But sometimes some people are great in one industry and terrible in another. So being self-aware, it all starts there. And then really diving deeper into, okay, what would complement my current business? Or, you know, do I just go out and buy out one of my neighbors? Or do I buy out more territory under the same umbrella brand? There's a lot of things to consider, but it can be a really smart move for a lot of people to diversify and not just have all their eggs in that one basket.
Attention, franchisors and franchisees. There are two really important resources that I want to share with you that will help you avoid costly mistakes and increase your enterprise value. The first is our free Facebook group. It's a community that has over 4,000 franchisees and franchisors in it. When somebody asks a question, they get honest and authentic answers from multiple perspectives. You can join the group for free over at franchisesecrets.com/Facebook. The second resource I want to share with you is if you're a franchisor and you're frustrated that you're not awarding as many franchises as you thought you would, this is the reason I created the Franchisor Mastermind. If you want access to the information, the techniques that the best franchise sales organizations are using to award franchises, and you want what mature brands have with their playbook of having happy, successful franchisees that grow the right way, then you might want to check out the Franchisor Mastermind. The reason why people join is they want access to my Rolodex, my connections. They want the playbook to achieve both short-term and long-term success. They want to increase enterprise value in their brand. Links will be in the show notes or at scalablefranchise.com. So I was just coaching one of my franchise tribe mastermind members, and he was saying, well, here's the thing. He's in service-based right now, and he's thinking about diversification, and he can diversify. He's very successful, one of the top franchisees in the service-based franchise already. He owns in multiple states already, and like I said, is one of the top. People come to him for advice about everything about that particular business. He comes to me and says, hey, I'm thinking about starting a complementary business to this in a different industry, but everything has to do with the home and service base. So he's like, I'm in the home already in this reoccurring revenue type business with also commercial aspects to it. So it's like, I'm already in the home. I'm thinking about starting something that is in the home with people already or on the outside of the home. Or I'm thinking about starting a maid service, or I'm thinking about starting senior care. And so knowing him, like both of those are high employee type businesses. And it's not necessarily the types of employees that you own now. Most of those. So right now he's thinking it's in the home. I'm already in the home. I said, like, let's look at the employees. Right now you have unskilled younger male employees working for you, and you're able to crush it because you know how to work with that type of employee. With maid service, it's a different type of demographic that's going to be doing that. With senior care, it's not only a different demographic, but it's somebody that probably works for another senior care agency. They all work for they're not full-time with you. Most of them aren't. Some employees are, but the people actually performing the service, going into the homes, helping take care of the customer, they work for other people as well. So they are not necessarily, full-time with you like he's used to. So my advice to him, generically speaking, was go into a complementary service that you're already in because you already crush it. Go with the same type of employee that you're used to working with because you might even have crossover with that employee that could work in your current business and also do some stuff with the other new business that you're looking at starting up. So also with this guy, he's actually starting outside of the franchising world in his service-based business. So franchisee, successful, sees opportunity and is likely to start up his own side business that will probably turn into a really big multi-million dollar business at some point, but he's going to start small with the customers basically that he already has. So that was my advice to him, but I think that helps some people. When I think about buying a second franchise, I really hone into the employees. And sometimes, Bobby, like I've wanted
Yeah.
to get away from the employees that I'm currently working with. Like, no, I don't want to continue with the same type of employee. I want to go to more of a manage the manager type model. And I've done that before. So it's not just the employees that are going to be working for you, but what type of manager are you going to hire that will manage those employees? And are you the type of franchisee entrepreneur that can hire the manager and let them run with the team members? So those are some things I think about as well. Any thoughts or comments on that?
Well, you bring up a really good point there, Eric, too, of like, look at your employees. Just because the business might be complementary, but is it a completely different type of staff or thing? I've owned both brick and mortar. I've owned service based businesses, and I laugh because retail to me is easy. That's what I we got to 60 plus locations in the retail business. I got to four with the service based business, and it's right, wrong, or indifferent. But I was used to managing, a lower paid but customer service oriented person. They were really customer service focused. And then I got into an industry that, yes, customer service for our franchise was really important, but not in the industry. And I had never been cursed out by so many employees and just like didn't show up. We were paying them double, triple what I was paying my retail employees, and it was still miserable. It's just that to me, that was a very different and challenging piece of the business, even though, hey, like it was a great business model. But for me, I wasn't happy. Like, what type of a lifestyle? It was 24/7. We were in the restoration space, great business, great franchise. But for me, I'm like, that's just not the employees were always exhausted because they're getting a midnight call or they're always on call and, you know, working holidays and weekends, all kinds of stuff. Like for me, we're actually getting a lot of these to your point is people saying, "You know what? I've worked in that space." And there's a reason, in my personal opinion, the largest franchisees in the world are brick and mortar. It from a scalability standpoint, you've got the customer, you got the product, and the employees all in one roof, right? You can control the controllables a lot better versus in a service-based business, you got trucks on the road. You got employees out there that you can't watch. You can't pull up cameras necessarily and see what they're doing. And then if they're going into someone's home or going to someone's home, I just mentioned I got some remodeling and stuff going on. Every job's different. The electrician's having challenges with this, and the roofer's having challenges with this. They're all different because they're hyper specific to my home. In a brick and mortar, well, they're coming into your home base and they're getting a similar customer experience each time. Whereas I have a very different customer experience with my electrician than I'm sure my neighbor would have, right? Because their scenarios, everything is so different. And so just knowing yourself and knowing the type of employees it takes to run each of those businesses is really important. But we get a lot, I mentioned like the tire. He's like, listen, we're brick and mortar, but I don't want to deal with service people. I'm just done dealing with mechanics, or I'm done dealing with this type of employee, or having I had a buddy who had a rig for a service-based business. It literally got demolished by a police cruiser, because his driver drove across a lane that he wasn't supposed to drive across. And literally, like, hazmat had to come out because there's, like, spray foam all over the place. Like, it was a mess and a nightmare for him. That's one less thing you have to deal with in a brick and mortar. So I am seeing, especially now, I think 2020, 21, 22, you saw a ton of people rushing to the service-based model, which is great. Faster startup, typically lower cost to get in. But what I'm seeing now is a lot of those same franchisees are calling me up saying, okay, Bobby, I want to do something completely different because I've done this and it was great. However, I'm exhausted. I'm tired of managing this type of employee. I'd rather have something that's a little more scalable for me. And the people that can do it in service based businesses are kudos to them, but not a lot can do it because you're more reliant on that employee because You don't have the same redundancy in a brick and mortar. In a brick and mortar, I might have 5 or 6 employees. 3 or 4 of them probably know how to do the manager's job. In my service-based business, here's what happened to me. I had one person that was doing the estimating and the bids and the marketing, and I had these other people that were technicians. They had no idea, no visibility to what that manager was doing on a daily basis because they just weren't with him all the time. They were off on a job while he's bidding other jobs. So I am seeing a lot of those multi-brand franchisees or those existing franchisees of another system look to, okay, hey, I want to scale, but I want something that's more scalable, not only from a staffing standpoint, but also from my time, right? Hey, maybe it's not as quick to ramp up. But hey, it's more scalable. And this is truly more of an executive model. Whereas a lot of those service based businesses I've been in can be executive, but out of the gates, you tend to be a little bit more owner operator versus you have, retail, brick and mortar, fitness franchises. You're not the one going out and working someone out or stretching or doing yoga, but you kind of know what's going on. In a service-based business, you kinda still need to know what to do because if you lose that manager like I did, it puts you in a world of hurt and you're kind of handcuffed to that one employee that was the crux of your operations. You don't have that same risk, in my opinion, in a lot of the, retail businesses today.
Bobby, you're just a retail franchise junkie. Like,
I am. I love it. It's what I know. I've done them both, but it's just what I know and what I go back to from a scalability, and honestly, I kinda like that not everyone's getting there. Retail is still kind of, in my opinion, the underrated gem in franchising, and especially when you have unique differentiators around the brand. So I like that because it means more opportunity for me.
so he's a retail junkie. You talk to somebody else. Go talk to the largest 1-800 junk franchisee who owns, I think, in Canada and the States. And I don't know how many tens of millions of dollars he does, but it's a lot. So he might. It'd be fun to have you guys square off and fight which one is better. Or you go to the food people, and they think food is the best, and and there's a million reasons why. And then you fly into Vegas when they have the big franchise show there with all the food people, and you see all their private jets, and then you're like, they might know something more than Erik or Bobby. So so I like retail as well. I've done mostly retail, and I don't like food because I don't know it. The guys with the jets, which I don't have, they would disagree with me. So it is really, you've got to understand who you're talking to and what your capacity is and the kind of budget that you have. And depending on what you want to do next. So all of that is a factor. Um, but there's you can build big businesses in franchising, in food, in retail, and service, and whatever it is. But you just have to get into the right brand. And I did an episode a while back talking about good franchisee, bad franchisor, good franchisee, that type of thing. So if you haven't listened to that, go back and listen to that, because what we're talking about mostly in this episode is good franchisee, good franchisor, or average franchisee, average franchisor.
Well, you make a good point though, because it's knowing yourself. Like it goes back to like awareness of, hey, where am I going to excel? What type of employee, what type of people do I like working with? What's my risk tolerance? What do I want the business to look like 5, 10 years from now? One of the things I know we preach all the time is start with the end in mind. If you're going to become a franchisee, what's your end goal? If it's to be, as executive or semi-passive, whatever you want to call it, as much as I can be, well, then build that team, build that infrastructure from day one, and just know that certain businesses are going to be easier to plug and play, like food, right? A lot of people have ran food restaurants. I've been to some of those. I've worked with some of those groups that don't 50 of this and 40 of that, and it's to your point. You see the private jets, you see all that. It's a different level of franchising, but for the average investor that's newer or new to franchising, maybe they have one brand or a second brand. There's baby steps. You're not going to get to 40 overnight, but know yourself and know, hey, what is your risk tolerance? What are the skill set? What are the type of people you like managing? What do you not want to do just as much as what you want to do? And that awareness is so important because to your point, the 1-800 Got Junk guy is going to say, Bobby, you're insane for signing leases. And for me, I've signed lots of leases. Doesn't scare me because I've done it before over and over again. What's scarier to me is having 50 or 85 trucks on the road with a unskilled person driving it. That's a liability for me. What happens if they crash into a school bus or something, right? Like just all the worst case scenarios. So I think you hit a really good point of you can be successful in anything, whether you're a good franchisee with a bad franchisor or you're a bad franchisee with a good franchisor. There's a lot of combinations that you can make it work.
Also think you look at all the food folks, look at the Flynn Group. I don't know how big that organization is, but I think they're the largest franchisee of a lot of different brands. And they are all in food. And they have just continued to stay in that world. I think they might have gone out a little bit out of that. And a lot of these large food franchisees have ventured out into some other types of franchises. I can't remember which ones, maybe Planet Fitness or something like that. But like they've mostly
Right.
stayed within food, and most of them have diversified into food as well. So they're not just with one brand. So there's something to be said of that. I was talking to a friend of mine last week, a different friend, and I've known him for many years. He's owned multiple brands, sold multiple brands as a franchisee, and his strategy is buying existing franchisees out. Some are, I wouldn't say they're distressed, but they're ready to get out and they're selling at good prices. Others are selling at really high prices, buying existing locations out at a high multiple because it's a successful business. But that's his playbook right now. And he's diversified outside of that particular franchise into two other brands. And one of those brands, I'm like, how's it going? He's like, it's a little rough. It's a little rough. One of them is like, it's going well, but another one, it's a little rough. Same guy, very successful, large team, one brand continuing to crush it. Another brand, different franchisor, he's like, it's just taken a while and there's a lot of bumps in the road. So my caution to everyone is if you have a lot of success with one brand, don't think it's just you. I think he probably, knowing him and his experience, I'm sure he knows his success with his current brand is not all about him. There's some luck, there's some good locations, there's riding a trend with in the particular industry. There's a lot of reasons he's successful. It's not just because he's just this amazing franchisee. Franchisees, myself included, all of a sudden have some success and think, this is all me. Like I am the magic here. And I can go into any other brand and put in the magic dust and poof, I'm going to have instant success. And the current franchise that I'm in, I can complain about
They
X,
don't
Y,
do
and Z.
anything.
Yeah,
They don't
I
do any
can.
work.
There's
They don't
things I
provide
can complain
value.
about. Yeah, and I do, and I have, and then I go into a new brand. I'm like, wow, they really had some of these things together that I did not give them credit for. And this is all speaking from experience over the last 20 years. Like I've literally thought this brand is not doing very well. Why is this CEO, why is this founder saying and doing the things that they're doing and not listening to me? And then I go into another brand. I'm like, wow, I really miss that founder. I really miss that CEO, the COO, the CFO, the team that they had in place and the training that they actually had was really good. And I never gave it the credit that it deserved. And so I think as a caution to franchisees out there that are thinking about diversifying, you get comfortable with the brand. There's always going to be things that you don't like about a brand that you're in. But, you just start talking to some other franchisees, you might have some newfound respect for that brand. And then you go into a system that is not a really good system, or your eyes will be opened up and then you'll be like, that's what Erik was saying. But that's just the nature of franchising. That's the nature of building a business. That's the difference between, if you start a business from scratch, there's growing pains. If you get into a new franchisor, that founder might be going above and beyond for you, and they might not be, but you never really know until you experience something different to really compare it to. And so I just caution franchisees out there, just because you're frustrated with one thing, you don't have anything to compare it to. So just give that franchisor grace. But also, that is the reason that some franchisees that are involved in a brand that is not that great might want to diversify because they love franchising. They are a good franchisee in a bad system. That might in itself be a reason to go into a new brand. So what do you think? What say you, Bobby?
Yeah, I think it's spot on. And the other, I'll play devil's advocate on the other side too. Like with one of our brands right now, it's people going from food to beauty. We have multiple franchisees within this one food concept that are gravitating towards beauty. And so I do think you see some of these. What I love to see is we're evaluating some of the brands with Front Street, especially, ways we have franchisees coming in from other systems. Because what'll happen, and this is, everyone knows this happens. You get one or two franchisees in from a system, and that franchisee starts having success with a new brand. And everybody kind of says, well, hey, like, what are you doing now? How's it going? Like, what's going on? And you see kind of the trail of other franchisees joining. And so you've seen that with people. Planet Fitness have joined other things. Orange Theory franchisees have gotten to things, beauty. But we're seeing a couple right now with some of our brands where we're seeing a lot of people with other experience in food, or what I consider more complex services, like very complex. They're running multiple service offerings. They're running, ones that require medical directors or license requirements. And then they're going to a brand that requires no medical license, no specific requirements. The service is significantly less strenuous for the provider. And the way they think of it there is like, this is easy. Or, hey, compared to food, your shelf life's a year. Like, this is amazing. My food goes bad in a matter of days. And there's less waste and much higher margins. So you do see some of those successful franchisees in what I consider tougher categories. We both agree food is not for us. The labor model is not my favorite because people aren't nice to QSR or fast food employees. The product goes bad very quickly. The margins are thin. Those are all the reasons I don't love it, but there's a ton of volume. Those people that look at the beauty concept or other things maybe we offer, and they say, man, here's a product, great margins. It's a service-based business in a retail setting. I love that. And you don't require extreme licensing or crazy, I don't need medical directors on staff or nurses or whatever it may be. That can be significantly more advantageous. And if they can run a much more complex business, at least with some of our portfolio brands with Front Street, I feel pretty darn good that, hey, they can run a dumbed down version. I say that jokingly, but it's a more simplistic model. And maybe it's a single service, or maybe it's one or two services compared to the 15 or 20 that they offer today, or it's not food. So we're seeing a lot of that with beauty and even fitness, and then some food that are gravitating towards some of our brands today, because it, from the franchisee perspective, seems a lot simpler. And also a lot of these franchisees were early adopters of those brands. So they didn't join the business when I had 200-300 franchisees. I have some of these that said, Bobby, they didn't even have a discovery day. You guys have, 3 locations open with GoGlow, but it's light years ahead of where the other brands were that I joined. I literally sat down at a patio table at a restaurant, shook their hands and signed the franchise agreement. That's the formality of what it was for them. So I think you're seeing some of the brands evolve. You do see some brands that punch above their weight class, like brands that are partnered with groups like Front Street and others. But ultimately, like, it's both sides. Don't get overzealous because you've had success in one system. I had that happen too. And then all of a sudden I was very humbled in my next endeavor after the first franchise I was a part of. But at the same time, if someone has a much more complex business and you're moving to something maybe a little more simplistic, that could be a good sign. It may not, but it's something to look at and something we evaluate. If you're a franchisor looking at franchisees expanding, I want to look at what's the team in place, how much time does this owner have to spend on their existing business and their current business, the new one that they're looking at opening. And is this more complex or less complex than the existing franchise they're running? If it's less complex, great. I love that. If it's more complex, I'm going to ask, do they have the chops for it? Are they ready to do it again? And are they ready to join if I am an emerging brand at the emerging level, or do they need to wait a year or two until we have a brand president hired or more of a corporate infrastructure before they're really ready to join this franchise?
Bobby, thanks again, my friend.
Thanks, Erik. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the Franchise Secrets podcast. Links to everything can be found over at franchisesecrets.com. And if you want my help with anything from starting your own franchise to growing your current franchise business, please visit scalablefranchise.com.